Who like them be some ski booty, Ohio Riz? What the ski booty? What the ski booty? What the ski booty? With the Ohio kids, with the Ohio kids, with the singers, with the Riz, Ohio Rizzler thing. What the ski booty? Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, hold on. I'll be right back. I'm gonna type this in the chat. Okay, I typed that in the chat. So this is just a placeholder, to be honest. Flame blocks, this is crazy. Okay, chat. I don't think everyone's gonna join, but I have a very cool idea, and this was the idea. So, what the stream is about is where viewers can suggest any series, and I will watch the entire series. What is this? Yeah, I got copyright. Let's go.
Can someone tell me if this is real or not? So that's a Note 7, which we all know can go kaboom, but it says risk an explosion and there's a timer going on. Huh? Can
Strongest case worldwide. Strongest.
7 grams of protein.
I am Steve.
9 grams of protein.
Come in close and look at the queso cheese and lunchly versus whatever that is. So drip versus stick. I like my cheese drippy, bruh. This is a lunchly salsa right here. Look at the consistency, the texture. And this is Lunchables. This is, and look, it's watery. It's, I can't even look at that. With 400 milligrams of electrolytes, my God.
7 grams of protein.
9 grams of protein.
Come in close and look at the queso cheese and lunchly versus what that is. Versus stick. I like my cheese drippy, bro. This is a lunchly salsa right here. Look at the consistency, the texture. And this is Lunchables. This is, look at water. Look at that.
7 grams of protein.
9 grams of protein.
Are playing cards dangerous? Apparently it's possible to cut food in half with a playing card. And I want to try. The only problem, I only have an hour to do it.
That is not really that skibidi. Watch over simplement. It better not be that copyright, okay? It better not be oh. The history of World War? I said I was gonna watch the entire series. This? Bro. Was this? Oversimplified. Okay. So if anyone has joined and doesn't know what is going on, I'm streaming about what any series that you viewers can recommend. And Shark recommended this, and so we're gonna be watching the entire history of Oversimplified. Watch Mnemonic Wars. Okay, we're gonna watch this one first, and then watch. It better not be inappropriate. Wait, hold on. Hold on. Mnemonic Wars of. Wait, hold on. From. Mnemonic Wars. This? There's gotta be a playlist. They gotta make a playlist. They gotta make a playlist. Or is it only just two? There's gotta be a playlist. Is there only two? Type. Is there only two? Is there only two? Cause these two are very long though. Just watch all of it from the playlist, or just two of the videos. The playlist or two of the videos. Type. Is there only two? E. Okay, we're gonna watch two of the videos.
Living with opioid addiction can be a
It
struggle.
better
Trapped in a
I better
cycle
not
of
get
opioid
copyright or
use,
anything.
withdrawal, and cravings. Sublocade.
This video was made possible by. Okay, Mrs. Bonaparte. Head on over.
Oh,
to
list
the
it? Oh, the
benefits such as
playlist?
Discord
Okay.
access, and maybe even a little behind.
Alright, we're gonna watch the playlist. This one? Alright. We're gonna watch every single thing. I better not get copyright or anything. Okay. Alright, let's watch.
The world of 1914, a time of modern technology, culture, and fashion.
What am I learning
Truly the
about
height of
history, bro?
civilization. Let's have a war. Everyone knew a big war was coming. France wanted some stuff back that Germany had taken from it. Germany wanted to take more of everyone's stuff, and they were building a big sexy navy that was making the British uncomfortable.
Hey,
Eastern
yo.
empires thought they were really cool, but lots of different people who lived there didn't think it was so cool. And some of them had even been declaring independence with help from Russia. Everyone was talking about each other behind each other's backs, throwing the fact that military technology had come a long way since the last major war, and suddenly everyone was pretty eager to beat each other up. In this area of Austria-Hungary lived some Serbs and Bosnians who hated living in Austria-Hungary. So the Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand goes there for a nice drive in an open-top car with his car's route published in advance. And that went just about as well as you'd expect. Some assassins were waiting for him along the way and threw bombs at his car, but they missed and blew up some officers behind him instead. So the Archduke goes into hiding, leaves Sarajevo, and the whole war never happened. Except no, the Archduke doesn't leave, but instead goes back out in the open-top car to visit the injured officers in hospital. The driver takes a wrong turn and by sheer coincidence gets stuck beside one of the failed assassins.
Dog was not being that skitty.
Austria-Hungary is understandably pissed about all this, and they think the Serbian government had something to do with it, which they might have. So they go to their ally Germany and say, "Hey Germany, we're going to declare war on Serbia," and Germany is all for that. So Austria-Hungary send a big list of impossible demands to Serbia, and when Serbia refuses, they declare war.
Something's about to go down.
And Germany are friends, and Serbia is protected by Russia, who's friends with France, so they'll declare war on each other. Montenegro joins in too. France and Britain also have a kind of alliance, so when France says, "Hey Britain, you got my back?" like, maybe. And then they decide to stay out of it, which is great for Germany, because Germany has a plan. They know that Russia is so big and clumsy that it will take them a while to get ready for war. So with this guy in charge, Germany will send all its troops into France at lightning speed while Russia's getting ready, defeat France, then move all the troops to Russia and defeat Russia, and then we all speak German and eat Pfeffer Pothast every day. Just one problem.
What?
France has loads of forts and defenses along its German border, and Germany can't waste any time fighting them, so Germany decides to go around them. Through Belgium.
Invasion.
Belgium is neutral, but Germany wants to march 750,000 troops through it to get around France's defenses. They're hoping Belgium will just kind of sit down and shut up, but they don't. They fight back. And they're pretty good too, so they slow the Germans down. What's worse is that Britain shows up, and they're pretty pissed that Germany's invading neutral countries. So now Britain declares war on Germany. So Germany push on through Belgium and commit some atrocities along the way. They also wear spikes and sometimes skulls on the uniform. So if you're trying to not look like the bad guys, good job. The Allies have a propaganda.
Good job is crazy.
And this starts having an influence around the world, notably in America. The US President Woodrow Wilson sees himself as a bit of a Jesus figure, and spends most of the war trying to get everyone to just hug it out. But there's also a large population of ethnic Germans living in the United States, and when the war first broke out, they were like, yay Germany! But now that they're committing atrocities in Belgium, they're less enthusiastic. Let's play Spot the French Soldier.
He's right
Did
there.
you see him? Easy, right? He's wearing a bright blue uniform with red trousers. And do you know who else spotted him easily too? The Germans. So when the French were slowly marching in columns through the countryside, the Germans easily tore them to shreds with their giant guns. All the nations
Doggo,
involved in this war went
please,
in with an old school war mentality,
Trying to learn.
and all of them had to update their uniforms and tactics a lot during the Great War.
Doggo, I'm trying to learn about
Because this war
history.
was going to be like nothing
This dog
anyone
doesn't
had
want me to
ever
learn
seen
about
before.
history.
Russia's ready for war, and way earlier than expected. Hey, Austria-Hungary, can you get on top of that? Oh yeah, sure, we've got this. Nope. So Germany has to send some troops back to the east to defend against the Russians. The chief of staff of the Austro-Hungarian army is this guy, and although he is handsome, he turns out not to be the best military strategist. Austria-Hungary constantly ignores Germany's advice, and then comes running back to Germany whenever they get in trouble. Austria-Hungary even gets its ass kicked by tiny Serbia, who repels all their invasion attempts at the start of the war. It's better news for Germany in the north, though, where they almost completely wiped out the Russian Second Army. Back on the western front, the Germans continue advancing and are in sight of Paris.
No
At this
offense.
point, anyone would be forgiven for thinking the Germans were going to get that quick victory after all. But then things started to go
Doggo.
wrong. The French commander-in-chief
I mean,
knew
true.
something had to
Doggo
be
does
done,
not.
and he ordered his armies to stop retreating.
They're
In the
eating the
resulting
dog.
battle,
Bro, they
the
put
gap
Donald
opened up
Trump in the
German
news
lines.
and
If a gap opens
I
up,
put they're
the enemy
eating the
can flank
dog.
you from the side and behind, so the German armies have to retreat. The Allies launch a counterattack, so the Germans dig into defensive positions. The Allies do the same. Then both sides move north.
I mean,
trying
not
to
gonna lie,
flank each other
it's a
along the
really
way.
good strat.
When they reach the sea, they're in a stalemate with trench systems running the whole way from the coast to Switzerland, the beginning of trench warfare on the Western Front. Here's how trench warfare works. Two opposing lines of trenches with no man's land in between. One side would pummel the other with hundreds
Bro,
of thousands
be
of
quiet.
artillery,
I'm trying to
sometimes for days
learn.
at a time.
Oh
This had a
my
huge
God.
psychological effect on the soldiers.
Bro, I'm
leaving
trying to
the
learn about the
Then, the
history.
attacking troops would leave their trenches and rush across no man's land.
I mean, not gonna lie,
A muddy wet
it's
mass
history,
of
right?
snow craters and barbed wire. The defending trench would unleash machine gun fire on the attackers, causing thousands of casualties. The attackers would
Yeah,
send
guys,
wave
Doggo
after
does not
wave
like
until
it.
either they gave up or the opposing trench was finally overrun. There would be months of fighting and the deaths of thousands in order to gain a few meters or kilometers of land. Living in the trenches was hard work too. Corpses, mud that could swallow you whole, pools of poisonous water, rats, disease, the smell. It's insane that millions of soldiers put up with these conditions, and commanders ordered them to do so for years.
We're gonna watch part 2. No, we're gonna watch part 2. Alright, part 2.
With both sides stuck in a hard stalemate, they knew this war wasn't going to be about taking territory, but about simply wearing each other down. The Allies had plenty of men to expend from its overseas dominions, and the British also started a naval blockade, so Germany couldn't import stuff, like food. Neither side really wanted a long, grueling war, though, so they both thought of ways to break the deadlock on the Western Front. Idea number 1, new frontiers. When the war first broke
Sonic
out,
reference?
it was quick
There's
to
the
take
in the pit.
The Allies also quickly jumped on Germany's colonies in Africa, and particularly in German East Africa, locals were enlisted as soldiers and carriers by both sides, leading to a
There's
tragic loss
the
of life
in
in
the
native Africans.
pit. I'm not
Some
singing
new
the entire
combatants entered the war as
song.
well. The Allies
This is
and France were Italy
copyright.
and Japan. Japan was busy building itself an empire, so it was more than happy to take away German islands and colonies in East Asia. Italy actually had an alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary before the war, but after some tense relations, and then the Allies promising to give them some of Austria-Hungary's stuff, they switched sides. Italy opened up a front in the mountains here, but like everyone else, they were stuck in stalemate for most of the war. The Central Powers' new friend was a struggling empire in the Middle East. The Ottoman were divided on whether to actually join the war or not.
Yay, war,
since they had
nah,
been exhausted
war.
by the recent Balkan Wars. Some of the politicians who did want to join went off on their own and fired some shells at Russia, and then came back and said, "Whoops, looks like we're at war now." The Ottoman entry into the war was of particular concern to the British, since the Middle East was full of
Oh,
oil.
British. Wrong
They
anthem.
started to attack Russia in the Caucasus Mountains.
I love British. I'm gonna drink tea. I love tea. British.
Now from the British, but that failed too.
This
Then the
day
Allies
in
tried to take Gardner
the
like Gallipoli in a long and hard trench warfare campaign, but that also failed. The Ottomans blamed their initial losses on the ethnic Armenians living within Ottoman territory, and the resulting Armenian genocide led to the deaths of 1.5 million people.
That's
Then
crazy.
the Germans sent spies into Afghanistan to try to convince the Arab tribes there to rise up in jihad against the British and attack India. But that plan failed, partly because the spies got bored,
British
turned their
Indian?
alcohol, and got drunk, which is a bad thing to do in Afghanistan. All these new frontiers hadn't done much to change the war. Aware that the Allies had more men and supplies than them, the Germans knew they had to do something to break the stalemate. Before the war, there was a big conference that set out the rules of modern warfare. No chemical weapons, no killing civilians. Basically, don't be jerks. The Germans held a meeting and decided to be jerks. Zeppelin air raids commenced over British cities. They also started attacking the Allied trenches with chlorine gas, and they used submarines to sink
That's
civilian
crazy.
ships. One such civilian ship was the Lusitania, which had 159 Americans on board when it was sunk.
America.
Showing US opinion against the Germans. Not to be completely unfair to the Germans, the Allies also engaged in chemical warfare soon after, and they had been hiding anti-submarine weapons on their civilian ships, which let the Germans justify their attacks. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary still hadn't dealt with Serbia, so the Central Powers enlisted some help. Bulgaria wished it was bigger and was still bitter about losing the Second Balkan War. The Central Powers promised to make all of Bulgaria's wildest dreams come true if they helped, so they signed on, and together they knocked out Serbia. The Serbian troops retreated through Albania, which was neutral but had some ties to Austria-Hungary. So Austria-Hungary entered Albania in a friendly invasion to chase down the Serbians. Many of them escaped by sea. It's 1916, and a lot is happening. As if they didn't have enough enemies already, Germany added one more to the list. Portugal had been getting a bit chummy with the Allies behind the scenes, and Germany didn't like that one bit. Around the same time, the only sea battle of the war happened. Both sides had a new powerful class of battleships called dreadnoughts, but they were so expensive to build that neither side wanted to risk losing them, so they kept them in port, except for one time when they had a big fight and a bunch of them got damaged, so they didn't try that again. The UK started conscripting men to the army, so they had plenty of reserves, which is just as well because the Western Front was about to get brutal. The longest and one of the bloodiest battles of the war started when the Germans launched an attack around the French city of Verdun. The French defended it desperately, leading to hundreds of thousands of casualties. Under pressure, the French called on its allies to do something to draw the Germans' attention away, so the British started their own long and brutal fight, the Battle of the Somme, with 60,000 British casualties on just the first day. It was also here that the British first used one crazy brand new piece of sci-fi technology. The Russians had been getting pushed back further and further into their own territory, but in response to the French call for help, they began a huge offensive, and did really well until they ran out of supplies and got stuck. Seeing how well the Russians had been doing, Romania decided now would be a great time to jump in and win the war, and then they got pounded. The Greeks were fighting amongst themselves about whether to join the war or not. The king liked the Central Powers, while the Prime Minister wanted to join the Allies. After a brief national schism, during which the country split into two, the king finally abdicated and the country reunited. With Allied help, they began a new offensive. In the Middle East, Russia was pushing into Ottoman territory from the north. The British had also made a landing in Mesopotamia to protect Persia's oil fields, and they had also sent a small army up the Tigris River to try to take Baghdad, but the army got sieged in the town of Kut along the way, and eventually surrendered. A new offensive was launched from the south with all-out desert warfare. The offensive was aided by one famous British officer, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, who helped lead the Arab tribes in a revolt that wreaked havoc on the Ottoman supply lines. By the time 1917 rolled around, everyone was exhausted. There were mutinies in the French army, the German populace was starving, and the war had drained all of Russia's supplies. There was no clear winner, and it was still anyone's war. The only question now was, who was going to break first? And the answer was Russia. Tired of not eating, and mad that a crazy magic homeless guy was calling some of the shots, there was an uprising in Petrograd, complete with riots and strikes. The riots turned into a full-scale revolution, and a new government overthrew the Tsar. Then a few months later, the Bolsheviks overthrew the new government, and they pulled Russia out of the war. This was great news for Germany, who now only had to focus on the Western Front. But there was still one problem. The pesky United States of America was looking increasingly like it was going to join the war. America had been selling supplies to the Allies throughout the war, and was getting super rich off the back of it, meaning it was in fantastic shape. And
America! America!
So Germany
America!
telegraphed to Mexico saying, wouldn't it be crazy cool if you guys attacked America? But the British intercepted the message, showed it to the Americans, and that was the final straw. American troops began shipping out to Europe.
America!
This was terrible news for Germany, and they knew their only hope now was to force France and the UK to surrender before
America.
fresh American troops arrived. It was now that they started one final attack. They converted their troops and hit hard at the Somme and pushed the Allies back. They hit a second time from the north, then again and again. With each hit, the Germans were
Bro, Dago does not like to be
while the Allies were
Sasuke
getting
beating.
better and better at repelling their attacks. By the fifth punch, the Allies held the line and pushed back. With American troops now arriving in larger numbers, the Allies launched a counterattack, and that was it. The Central Powers were being pushed back on all fronts. Bulgaria collapsed first, followed by
Not gonna like true, but I don't know.
and finally, on November 11, 1918, at 11 o'clock, Germany surrendered. At the peace treaty, Germany was forced to reduce its military, accept war guilt, and pay the bill for the war. After indescribable suffering and millions dead, the world learned its lesson and never had such an awful war again.
And two. Alright, part 3. Bro, what am I getting an ad for Brawl Stars, bro?
Look at this baby. So gentle. So innocent. You'd think this child would grow up to become a good man. An honest man. Well, think again. Hitler was
Bad
born
symbol,
Adolf
bad
Hitler in
symbol.
1889 in a small town in Austria-Hungary. His father, Alois Schicklgruber, was born out of wedlock, but eventually changed his name to that of his stepfather, becoming Alois Hitler. Alois was a mid-level Austrian customs officer, not really rolling in cash, but certainly rolling in women. He married a rich, older lady, but then immediately started having affairs, including one with a much younger house servant. A few years later, he left his sick wife to be with his mistress, but since the Catholic Church didn't allow divorce at the time, he couldn't marry her. So he waited
Bro,
for
why-
his wife to
why
die
is
and had a
Snyder
child in the meantime.
uploading
Then his wife died,
episode
so he married
6?
his mistress and had another child, but then his new wife
Yo,
got
Chad,
sick,
should
so
I
he
watch
employed
a
his
series
much younger
after
cousin
this
Clara
vid?
to take care of her.
Should
Then
I
when
watch
his new
it?
wife died, he immediately got Clara, his cousin, pregnant, and then married her. In that order, you rockstar. Clara and Alois had 3 children together, who all
Should I
tragically
watch-
died while in
should I watch
infancy. So when the
Snyder,
4th child,
uh,
Adolf, came
new
along,
series?
Clara spoiled him rotten. The Hitlers had 2 more kids, and the family moved around a few times,
That's
meaning
actually called a.
Adolf had to attend 5 different elementary schools. Adolf's father was strict, quick to anger, and took most of it out on the eldest son until he had enough and ran away at the age of 14, leaving 7-year-old Adolf to do most of the chores and get berated by his father. The result was a difficult relationship with his dad while he was super attached to his mother, who worried over him and his health excessively. Hitler did well in school at first. His grades were good and his teachers praised him. He was popular with the other kids and enjoyed gathering them together to play war games. He also loved reading, and particularly liked stories about cowboys and Indians. As he grew older though, he started to get into trouble. He was caught smoking once, organized a raid on a local orchard, tormented his pro-Austria religion teacher with symbolic gestures, displaying his allegiance to the idea of united Germanic people under a greater German state in defiance of Habsburg Austria.
Jimmy's the
You know,
best is
the
crazy.
usual. All of this enraged Adolf's father, who punished him severely. The area of Austria-Hungary that Hitler lived in was once part of the German Confederation, and many of the people who lived there considered themselves to be German. Adolf tended to just go against whatever his father said, and since his father was an Austrian public official, Hitler got big into German nationalism. This enraged Adolf's father, who punished him severely. Around this time,
Hey,
a family
yo.
tragedy struck. His 6-year-old brother, whom he loved a lot, died of measles when Adolf was 10, and was buried in the cemetery just across from their home. Around this time, neighbors reported a change in the young boy. Strange behaviors such as talking to trees and staying up late staring at the stars from the cemetery walls. He lost interest in religion, and his school grades started to decline. which enraged his father, who punished him severely. It also didn't help that he had just entered high school, and the cool city boys
just
treated him like a
punished him.
rural
Still
peasant. He had
crazy.
to repeat a grade and had little interest in most school subjects, instead spending his time reading and drawing, which he was quite good at. One day his father said, "Son, someday you'll be a big balls public official like me."
Hey, yo.
And Adolf replied, "No, father, I'm going to become an artist and soar high above the clouds with the eagles." This enraged his father, but by this time he was an old-ass man, so he just sort of let it go, and then died of a lung hemorrhage. Hitler just about passed his final semester, and celebrated in the typical way, by getting blackout drunk and wiping his ass with the certificate. However, he didn't take the overall final school exam, instead just dropping out. The now 16-year-old boy was unemployed, without much purpose in life, and for the next 3 years he stayed that way. He spent most of his time at the opera with his only friend, August Kubizek. Kubizek later wrote his memories of the young Hitler, and said he was passionately interested in many things, felt he was in many ways better than others his age, was quick to anger just like his father, and an incredible speaker once he was ranting. When he was 18, he said a very sad goodbye to his mother and went to Vienna to take the entrance exam for art school. He failed. Soon after, he had to return home. His mother was sick, and her health was rapidly deteriorating. Hitler stayed by her side, and when she eventually died,
I have
the
a
family
very
doctor
good question,
said he
but
had
I don't
never
wanna
seen
ask
someone
right now.
so overwhelmed
Or
with
ask-
grief as Hitler was.
After the video
Then Hitler
ends.
returned to Vienna, still hoping to find a career in the arts, but he never did. Instead, without parental support, Hitler ended up on the streets. Now in his early 20s, he spent a few rough years living in and out of homeless shelters, making what little he could from selling postcards he painted. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when and how Hitler's extreme ideological beliefs formed, but his time in Vienna would have certainly played a role. Anti-Semitism was widespread in the city. The mayor, whom Hitler supported, was an outspoken anti-Semite. There were many right-wing anti-Semitic newsletters, which Hitler took a keen interest in. He bought into the conspiracy theories and became a firm believer in the idea that there are many races in constant struggle with one another, the purest of which were the German Aryan people, and the worst of which, he believed, were Jews. Since Austria-Hungary
Okay.
was a multi-ethnic empire full of lesser races, Hitler
My opinion. Okay, that's my opinion.
wasn't a fan. So when he was 24, he moved
Guys, I am no fan to get, and I'm
to
fine.
Munich in Germany to avoid doing military service. And for one more year, he was a drifter on the streets, until something huge happened. In 1914, long-standing tensions in Europe erupted into the First World War. Crowds across Europe celebrated the news. Within days, Hitler volunteered for the German army. The war gave him a purpose in life. His fellow soldiers gave him friendship and brotherhood. Despite the horrors of war, Hitler considered it to be the best time of his life. He was reportedly a brave soldier and was awarded the Iron Cross, first class. He was also very lucky and had many close encounters with death. His luck ran out in 1916, however, when an artillery shell injured his leg. He went back to Germany to recover and was outraged to find a general apathetic anti-war attitude among the exhausted and hungry German populace.
No
With the
war,
war
I'm
turning
quite
against
hungry.
Germany, he returned to the front lines, but was temporarily blinded by a British gas attack in 1918. A month later, still recovering in hospital, Hitler learned of Germany's defeat and surrender. The terms of the peace treaty were tough on Germany. It had to pay a lot of money and lose a lot of soldiers. These conditions weakened Germany and humiliated the German people. Europe's borders changed after the war too. New countries were formed out of Russia's lost territory, Austria-Hungary was dissolved, and there was one big new country splitting Germany into two. Hitler, seeing the country he loved humiliated like this, said that hatred grew in him for those responsible, by which he meant communists and Jews, who he believed had stabbed Germany in the back by spreading dissent and anti-war propaganda back home.
What happened to Jews at this point, bro? Okay, part 2.
Since Germany's military had to be reduced, Hitler could no longer remain a soldier after the war, but he kept working for the army as an informant. After the war, communists in Germany had attempted a revolution, and the government was worried about communism in general. So Hitler was tasked with infiltrating and reporting on any new political parties that could pose a communist threat. A new party called the German Workers' Party threw up a whole bunch of red flags, so Hitler went along to one of their meetings, but found that they weren't communist at all. They were extreme right and shared many of his extreme beliefs, so he left the army and signed up to join the party. His fantastic speaking abilities impressed the party's leadership and supporters, and he very quickly rose to the top. He decided the party needed a makeover, so he renamed it to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi for short, and he gave it a new color scheme. The Nazis were very specific on policy. but Hitler made extravagant promises to
The
return Germany
Nazi
to its former
is
glory by
a
undoing
bad
the Treaty
symbol,
of Versailles and
and
reuniting all ethnic
they're
Germans into one
they're
nation.
they're really
He
bad
also
people.
said that only pure Aryan people should be allowed to be citizens, and that all Jews would lose their citizenship. These ideas were already common in extreme right politics, but what set the Nazis apart was Hitler himself, and they quickly became the leading party on the extreme right. Many of the political parties in Germany at the time had paramilitary wings, and the Nazis were no different. Hitler set up the very descriptive Whole Protection Detachment, later changed to the very delightful Gymnastic and Sports Division, and finally settling on the ominous Storm Detachment, or SA for short. Their job was to defend Nazi party meetings and intimidate political opponents, and they would frequently engage in battles with communists on the streets. Since the Allies had demanded a reduction in Germany's military size, many trained soldiers were left unemployed. They liked the Nazi ideology, and it was only natural for them to join the SA, which grew larger and larger over time. The new democratic government that formed after World War I was pretty weak and ineffective. In order to pay reparations to the Allies, it started printing more money. The problem is that printing money doesn't actually give a country more money, it just makes money less valuable. So as the country printed more and more money, it became worth less and less, and the currency crashed. In 1919, one US dollar was worth about 4 German marks. By December 1923, one US dollar was equal to 4.2 trillion marks. The price of bread rose to 200 billion marks. Banknotes became worthless. Unsurprisingly, in such an economic crisis, Germany struggled to pay the Allies. The French were pissed about this, so they occupied the Ruhr, an area full of factories, and took the economic output from the area as payment. They treated the German civilians badly, and in total, approximately 130 Germans were killed during the occupation. Germans were furious, and Hitler and the Nazis thought that now would be a great time to lead a revolution. In November 1923, inspired by something a certain bold Italian man did a year earlier, Hitler stormed a meeting at a beer hall and called for an uprising against the government. With his supporters, he marched on the streets of Munich, hoping the police would join his side. They did not. Hitler was put on trial for treason. He could have been sentenced to life, but the right-wing judges thought he was a pretty cool guy. Hitler knew the judges and knew that they would be lenient, so he took the opportunity to make impassioned speeches during the trial. And in the end, he was sentenced to just 5 years in prison, of which he only served 9 months, and when I say prison, it was more like a pleasant hotel stay where he had plenty of time to write a book. The whole affair was covered by the media nationwide, and it made Hitler famous. Hitler and his extreme message were now known throughout Germany, but the everyday Germans still didn't care much for him. In the 1928 election, the Nazis only won about 2% of the vote. Many were still intimidated by all the violence and the shouting and how unpolitician-like he was, but a new economic crisis would change all of that. To help Germany pay its reparations, America agreed to give it loans. In October 1929, the Wall Street crash happened, and America wanted its money back. The economic strain this put on an already struggling Germany was severe. Unemployment skyrocketed, poverty was widespread, and Germans were sick of it. It was clear that the newly formed democracy wasn't working. In the face of crisis, Germans began moving to the political extremes. If you were German and wanted change, your choices now were either the communists or the Nazis. Hitler claimed that he was the only one who could return Germany to its former glory.
I'll do a
The
part
Nazi
2 of
Party
this.
used propaganda
This was
to make
fun,
Hitler seem like
and
a
I'll
great
see you
and
guys
powerful man,
part
and they
2.
gave the German people
Thank you
a
guys for
scapegoat
watching,
to
and
blame
I'll
for
see you
all their
guys
suffering. The promise of
tomorrow.